Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be breaking into a 4L65E, tearing it down and inspecting everything, but this video is going to be a little bit different of a teardown in that I'm not going to get into super granular detail about all the points of inspections, failure modes, drivability symptoms, and associated causes. I mean, I'll hit all the highlights, but I got a 4L60E teardown inspection video that's like over 2 hours long, and it gets into that, super into the weeds, level of detail where I cover pretty much every single thing. Check that out if you're looking for something like that. This one's going to be a little bit quicker. What I am going to focus on is the differences between the 4L60 and the 4L65E. Alright, so fasteners, the bell housing to the case, that's going to be a Torx Plus 50. Do not use a Torx 50. It must be Torx Plus. 13 millimeters here on the manual lever position sensor, 2 case bolts, 15 millimeters here, Torx 40 here, 15 millimeters on the extension housing, and that's true of any 2 or 4-wheel drive housing, 8 millimeters for this little cable bracket, and then on the other side it has its exhaust shield, so 13 millimeter, and then obviously the servo is just a servo, and then we'll use this special tool to kind of collapse the case connector into the case without damaging it. Not that we would ever reuse the harness, just to kind of show you the tool. And then you have quick disconnects here, so you just take these off, use a little pick, and pull out the retaining rings or snap rings or whatever you want to call them. There's a lot of crud caked up in these, little heads. Just take your pick, clean it out. Last thing you want to do is strip these bolts out. Basically, the extraction method, if in fact that happens and you can't get the bolt out, is to drill through the bell housing perpendicular so that you shear the bolt in half. Alright, always do your end plate check. This has very little end play, so probably in the neighborhood of 15 thou, which for the 4L65s, that's a reasonable expectation that they would be set up for minimal end play. I mean, they are a performance version of this transmission, so you want to set your end play for anything performance between 15 and 20 thou. That's what I like to shoot for. If you're at 10 thousandths, that's also fine. Anything less than that is a little too tight. Manual lever position sensor, make sure you replace that. Otherwise, you run the risk of it failing and you not being able to start the vehicle. In 1996 through 2003, they had a 2-plug version of this sensor. So if it failed in park and you threw it in neutral and it fired up, that would mean that the neutral plug neutral channel was working, but the park was dead, or vice versa. 04 and up, they integrated everything into one channel, so you didn't have that luxury. Another thing I'd recommend too is have a spare in the vehicle so that if yours dies on the road and you're maybe a long way from home or outside a cell service area or whatever, you at least have something to throw on in a pinch. Alright, shift cable bracket is Torx 40. All right, make sure you press on your impact a little bit and get that socket deep into the bolt head. You don't want to strip those out either. I mean, worst case scenario, if one is stripped, I mean, you can take the whole transmission apart. You can get the pan out of the way, but it's not desirable. Okay, 15 millimeter on the extension housing bolts. Now I'm going to go down below to get those other two. And unfortunately, those are such that you really can only take them out so far before you run into interference with the back side of that thing. So 15 millimeter wrench. Okay, pump to case bolts are 13 millimeter. So I just like to take them out now, get it out of the way. Okay, these have the wedge style seal between the pump and the case. That changed in 2004. 2003 was the last year where the pump body had the groove for the traditional O-ring. And that little screeching sound you hear, that's the low roller clutch. You actually want to hear that. It tells you that the clutch is healthy. Okay, so first change I'll discuss is the presence of a Corvette servo, or at least there should be one in here. The Corvette servo is not unique to the 4L65 or 4L70. I believe they started to be introduced into the 4L60Es with the Corvettes, equipped with the LS1 back in 1997, but I could be wrong about that. I'm not 100%, but I believe that's the case. A lot of dirt on this thing. Okay, now this has a 553 servo. No, that shouldn't be. Alright, well, we're going to install a billet servo in this thing when we go back with it, but yeah. Yeah, 553 servo. It's disappointing. I should put that in this bucket. You could take the seal out here too while the pump is still in the case like this with the bell out of the way, or you can take it out after the fact. Alright, let me go get the tool for that and then we'll collapse it. Alright, so what this does is it collapses all of the locking tabs all the way around inward so that they don't break when you punch the connector through the case. There's a lot of dirt on this thing, so you want to make sure that the little tool is fully seated, and that'll punch it through for you. All right, let's flip it over. $13mm on the pan bolts, and I think that drain plug bolt is 15mm. So let me see if I can take that off. Sometimes these are very, very difficult to get off. They're stripped, or they they're rounded off or whatever. Yeah, it's not coming off. All right, we'll get that off via other methods. Okay, so we're working with an 05 unit. We have 05 here cast into the valve body. So that is the year of production for this particular unit. Okay, wiring harness you never reuse. Okay, sometimes happens. That's why you always replace your electricals. Don't ever want to reuse anything electrical and or electronic in the transmission. And that's true of all transmissions, not just 4L60, 65, whatever. 13mm, then you have 10mm, except for these two, these are 8mm. And then these three are 8mm. Make sure you put the 8mm long bolts here in these exact same three locations. Otherwise, you put yourself at risk for locking up the sun shell. For example, if you take this bolt and you put it here, then it's a very strong possibility you will not have reverse, second, or fourth upon putting the thing back in the vehicle. So detent roller. Sometimes these bolt heads will round off, and if so, just take a cutoff tool and cut a slit, and then the heat from the cutoff tool, chances are, will break the bond between the bolt and the threads in the case, and with a couple of smacks with an impact driver and hammer, it should come right out. Otherwise, just press down real good, and it'll come out. Okay, these two bolts here and here are shorter than all the others. Okay, there should be 7 check balls in the valve body. Don't ever leave any check balls out of the 4L60E valve body. They all need to be in there. Unless you're working with a shift kit that explicitly has you do that. Alright, and as always, replace these plastic accumulator pistons with aluminum ones. Alright, my air's not on, but you want to take shop air and just blow it right into here, and that will pop the piston out. We'll do that later. And there goes all the check balls. Alright, 8 millimeters here on the reverse hold down plate. Okay, this does not look like a 4L65E spacer plate either. I'm starting to wonder if somebody had put a 4L65E case, you know, that was empty and shoved 4L60E parts or, you know, stuff inside. I'm now concerned that we're not going to get to see 5-pinion front and rear planets. So, one of the differences between the 4L65 and the 4L60 is the shift calibration. So, that consists of different accumulator spring in the 1-2 accumulator valve in the valve body, and I'll point that out in a second if you're not already familiar. And it also consists of a slightly larger 2-3 feed orifice. So here's your 2-3 feed hole, okay, right here. This looks like, you know, the same sizing as you would see in any 4L60E. Okay, then you have your you have your band release, and then your 1-2 is a little bit bigger again in the 4L65, and I believe the 4th feed hole is the same, I believe. Alright, no change to how they set up the 4th accumulator. So this blue spring is standard on pretty much all of them to my knowledge. And same with the piston, it's going to be the same calibration there for 4th gear. No, one check ball fell on the floor. I'll have to get it later. 10 millimeters on the TCC solenoid. And then for your parking pole, guide plate. It's going to be 13 millimeters. And then 15 millimeters here on the selector shaft to rooster comb nut. Okay, sometimes these selector shafts like to get stuck in their respective bores. So as you can see, it's like, it's not moving at all when I try to yank on it. So just take a pry bar and lever against the band. And select your seal. If you've not rebuilt these before and you're not used to dealing with the selector seal, I would advise you to pick up maybe an extra one. So they can be a little tricky if you don't center this thing just right, perfectly straight. When you go to install it with a socket or a bushing driver of some sort, you might cock it sideways and bend it. So just keep that in mind. And there's your band anchor. Okay, with the pump, just lever it forward. All right, so here we have the input shaft exposed. 4L65Es have an induction hardened input shaft from the factory. That is different than the 4L60s. The 60s were just conventional cast steel, so extra strength, torque handling capability. So that's what it's supposed to be. This again looks to me like a conventional 4L60E. All right, so we have a piece of the band. This sometimes happens. You see kind of how it broke off. I don't see this too often. Every once in a while, one will come in looking like this, but it's usually the result of way too much, ratio in terms of your servo and your band apply. Okay, so here we see the 5-pinion front and rear planets. I'll clean up the pump and the drums in a second. We'll go through those a little bit in detail, but let me get the rest of the stuff out of the case. But there's the 5-pinion front and rear planets. All right, snap ring here. Again, you've seen this all before. Just get up in there. Okay. And then the output shaft itself should just come right out. All right, we're gonna keep this aside because we're gonna put it back in once we're ready to take the center support out. So I hope these planets are good. Okay, here is your reaction shaft. Now the 4L70Es, they had a hardened, induction hardened reaction shaft. Hardened and induction hardened. So it was double hardened. I'm just kidding. Just my fumbling over my words. So as usual, inspect. Okay, you want to make sure that none of these planets have side play. Now, these are good, but if this did, it is not a big deal. Just punch out the pinions, either you or a specialist, and then go in there with all new needle bearings and a new captured bearing. Okay, you want to check that, and you'll make this thing, if not good as new, better than new. Bearing seems fine. All right, journal looks okay, splines look good. I'm gonna wipe this planet off because it is filthy. All right, so that's the claim to fame of the 4L65. So this is a 65. This must have come out of a truck or an SUV or something. The 4L65E equipped vets, GTOs, they had a more aggressive calibration when it comes to the orifice sizing in the separator plate. Here's your reaction shaft bearing. That looks fine. All right, sun shell. This is the same garbage sun shell that is installed on all 700R4s, 4L60Es. So they are always at risk of snapping here at the neck or stripping out of the splines. These lugs like to get worn, you know, the feet of the sun shell. And then of course you always have wear here. So, you know, this is worthless. It'll go to the scrap yard. And then your center support thrust washer. Sun gear. All right, what I've been doing lately is putting in a Sonex sun gear wide bushing here. The factory bushing does like to walk, so put a little Loctite on the you know, outer diameter of the bushing and then press it in. Sun gear looks good. All right, let's get that center support snap ring out of there. Alright, now we're going to stick the output shaft back in so we can smack the center support and the rear gear train out of the case. Okay, not often that I have to do that. But in this case, it was necessary. Let me angle it up. A bearing. Feels good. Ring gear. So the 65s had this kind of conical style ring gear hub or output. Okay, 4L60Es, I don't often see them with this particular bottom plate here. Teeth look good, lugs look good, splines look good. Okay, feels fine. Okay, 5-pinion rear. Feels fine. Splines look good. Body looks good. Check for bluing and or heat damage around the pinions. That's common when the trans is abused, you know, not maintained, or just simply suffers some catastrophic failure of some sort. Okay, center support and low reverse. Steels look okay. Some scoring. Clutches look okay. Wave plate, so probably put a steel module in this thing just based on what I'm seeing. There's your low roller. Spins clockwise, locks counterclockwise. It's only on in first gear, so if you have no movement in drive, D3, 2, or 1, but reverse works, then the low roller has failed. Alright, let's see what's going on in here. Okay, this thing was kind of wedged or bent up a little bit, and that's why the center support wasn't coming out. Had to take the bigger hammer and flip it inverted. And again, every once in a while you'll encounter that. It's not a big deal. You just got to do what you got to do to get those parts out of there. Okay, I'm not going to bother with the low reverse piston right now. I mean, you just take your compressor tool and then you get on the snap ring and you pop it out. No big deal. Just want to get the case out of the way so we can look at the drums. Alright, got the bench cleaned off a little bit, fresh battery, so we're ready to go with the pump and the two drums. So as far as differences, 60 versus 65, there really isn't any, at least to my knowledge. 13 millimeters. Okay, this transmission has been used and abused. Used and abused. Okay, 13 vanes, as always. This is a reman unit. This is the original rotor guide. I didn't change stuff like that, but it actually looks factory to me. This is the updated later model spring for the slide they started to install, I want to say, in 05. 05 or 06, but this is clearly a 2005 year unit. Okay. I'm inclined to put a whole new pump kit in here after I have the working surfaces machined and cleaned up. So it'll get like a Sonex pump body bushing, and then we're going to do Transgo unbreakable pump rings. So it'll have the Transgo spring along with ductile iron pump rings for added strength. You can retro these 13 vane rotor slide combos into pump housings that initially took a 10 vane. You know, there is an argument for doing it. I don't know how strong it is over the 10 vane in terms of, you know, yeah, does this make sense to do? But it is a common modification that folks will do, including earlier 4L60Es. It took a 10 vane, so here we're talking, I think, 93 to 97 or 92, 97, and then, or I should say 92, 96. I think 97 and up is when they introduced the 13 vane, and then all the 700R4s. All right. Don't want to lose our little pivot pin spring, so working surfaces invariably need to be resurfaced. Very common. It's almost never the case where you can just run this as is. Every once in a while I get one in where at least the pump cover is fine, but the pump body is usually scored up pretty bad. Yeah, this has some scoring. I mean, it's not horrible, but it does need to be cleaned up. Okay, so we have a early style boost valve in here. I think the later style with the real stubby, little whatever you want to call that thing. Little end thing there. I don't know, I'm kind of at a loss for words for whatever reason. But late model units, they'll have a very, very, very short stem there. Yeah, we'll go with the word stem. That's good enough for now. All right. I never reuse these. They're usually worn out. Always put a Sonics. So the springs are probably fine, but the valve and sleeve itself, you want to replace. Okay, this one is kind of cocked sideways a little bit. There it goes. And then your torque converter clutch control valve. And my hands are very slippery. Every once in a great while you'll see one of these two springs broken. I mean, it is very rare. So it's not something you lose sleep over. Yeah, it's not something to worry about. Alright, one thing you always want to be careful of with these is the inner bore here where the sealing rings on the input shaft go. You want to make sure that there's no grooves cut into the sealing surface. If there are, then you'll need to either swap the stator or just replace the whole assembly. It's easier to replace the whole assembly. 13 vane. Here's your part number. Okay, you just want to match those two things, and it's usually never necessary to actually remove the stator unless, of course, you have to replace it. Check here for the journal surfaces. Make sure that they're not scored up. Okay, if they are, you'll want to get another one. But this pump looks okay. I mean, there's nothing about it that says I need to replace it. I just need to remachine it. And that applies to both pump cover and pump body. Pump body is going to be 1073. This is pretty universal. 96 through, I believe, end of production. They all had the same, PWM cast and the 1073 body. The one change, though, that you want to be mindful of is the, pump to case seal design. So this is a second design where it uses the wedge seal, like I mentioned earlier. The earlier design, which is 2003, all the way back to I guess when 700R4 went into production in '82, that uses the pump O-ring. Okay, so that's the only change you really need to be concerned about. And that's true of all 4L60, 65, and 70Es. Okay, in transwheel kits, they come with new snap rings for the boost valve and pressure regulator valve. All right, reverse input drum. Sorry, I had to get organized real quick. Reverse input drum, no changes between the 60, the 65, and the 70. They're all largely the same. And, you know, they have the same 4 clutch, 4 steels stack up, along with the Belleville style wave plate. Okay, so you have your apply plate. Your frictions, no difference between the 4L60 and the 65E in terms of the frictions used. The module is the same in terms of the materials used for each clutch pack. Tubular steels, 4L60, 65, and 70. Okay, these look perfectly fine. They can be reused. Just dirty out of here. Okay, reverse input drum. This surface is almost always warped. It's my recommendation that you go ahead and just have it turned so it's 100% true again, and then you can run your wide 2/4 band. I almost never use the factory bands anymore. I'm just the wide 2/4 bands, like I think another $10 over the factory band. It makes sense to do. Check these areas in here for the sealing rings for the stator. Make sure that there's no grooves cut. Replace the bushings, and you know, check the lugs too. Make sure that they're not, you know, blatantly worn or flagrantly worn. Other than that, you know, there's not a whole lot to the reverse input drum, and it's rare I see these bad. If you watch my 4L60E High Performance Part 6 and Part 7, that was a notable exception, but that is kind of few and far between. Alright, forward drum, induction hardened input shaft. Again, that's going to be a difference between the 4L60 and the 4L65/4L70E transmissions. The 4L70E also featured an induction hardened reaction shaft. That's not something that was found in the 4L65E to my knowledge. If I'm wrong about that, you know, please let me know, but as far as I know, that was introduced in 2007 with the 4L70. Okay, this has a number 68 thrust washer. That's the second thinnest selective spacer washer, whatever you want to call it. So they're all numbered. I believe it starts at number 67 and it goes all the way up to number 74 and number 75. The lower the number, the thinner the spacer. Okay, I'm going to put some fluid here and we're going to check the drum, make sure it's not leaking at the shaft for any of these applied circuits. So a moment of truth, this always makes me nervous a little bit, especially when we're dealing with a 4L65E. Okay, that means I'm looking for either another drum shaft assembly or I'm pressing this out and hoping I can find another drum. Now incidentally, the drums structurally, architecturally, are all the same between the 60 and the 65E. It's the 3/4 pack that's different and the shaft that's different. So here's the 2/3 feed. And we're looking for bubbles. Hopefully we don't see any. Okay, the ripples you see are just air escaping the nozzle, so that's good news. Again, let's hope and pray. Forward. And you don't need a ton of air. Don't inject like 120 psi. Otherwise you'll create kind of a geyser and, you know, maybe spray yourself down with transmission fluid. Okay, coast clutch, plug the forward feed. Alright, this drum is good. Get that fluid out of the way. Okay, let's have a look at our clutch pack. Let's see where I want to go with this. So we have load release springs installed, so they're going to kind of be fighting you a little bit, you know, in terms of outward spring tension on the snap ring. Okay, so we have a thinner pressure plate, or backing plate. This is the backing plate. And we should have 7 frictions and 6 steels. That's 7 frictions and 6 steels. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then this has what is more or less a standard apply plate for the 3/4 clutch. And I should say standard design. Let me clarify, standard design. Some of these have a backing plate that has HD stamped into it. Some do not. I see those more in the passenger cars, like the Vets and the GTOs that took these transmissions. But this is a legit 4L65E clutch pack. And I'll put the thicknesses of the clutches and steels, but I believe the steels are 90 or 95 thousandths thick, and the frictions, I believe, are 65 thousandths thick. 4L60E spec is 6 frictions, 5 steels, 110 thousandths on the steel plate, and 85 thousandths on the frictions. Okay, load release springs I almost always delete. So now we have our forward and our coast clutch along with the input sprag assembly. Looks like snap rings are fighting me today. I'm using substandard technique. So they are making a fool out of me. Come on, come here. I think the main thing I'm trying to do is not completely interfere with your view. And as a result, I'm looking stupid. Come on. All right. Okay, so here's the rest of the innards as far as clutch packs and sprags are concerned. So you got your forward, and then you got your coast clutch, and then of course our sprag assembly. No difference in terms of the frictions in the forward clutch pack. You're going to have your waved plate, cushion plate, and then your usual complement of frictions and steels. So 5 and 5, and these look okay. Now wait. The frictions go into the trash. I'll take one last look at them. Here's your coast clutch. 2 frictions, 2 steels. And our bearing. This bearing feels in good shape, looks in good shape. Steels are also decent looking. Okay, popular performance upgrade includes choline steels or lindered steels. Some 4L65s or 4L70s receive lindered steels. They are available over the counter. When I say lindered is equivalent to choline. Choline, I believe, is a proprietary term. So, you know, it's not, I don't believe it's so much a type of coating as it is the name of a coating. Okay, sprag. Okay, your overrun hub. Just going to be mindful, this sometimes will crack in real high horsepower or, you know, street strip race applications or something real heavy duty. So you want to make sure you check it all the way around, make sure there's no fractures. That one looked okay. The outer race. And by the way, I should probably just show this. Come on, get on there. So your sprag rotation is going to be clockwise. Okay, when you're holding the sun gear or the inner part of the sprag, and then it locks counterclockwise. So clockwise and then locks counterclockwise. This rolls over, you won't have any movement in drive. You will have manual low, manual 1, manual 2, but if the low roller clutch fails, then you're not going to have any movement in any forward range setting. So not that it really matters which one. If you have either one of those symptoms, you know the trans is coming out. You know, it's like I always tell people, you know, and most people just like if they have a problem with the transmission, they just want to know what it is. You know, I say, look, does it really matter? The only thing you really need to know is the problem fixable with the transmission, you know, remaining in the vehicle, or can you, you know, can you fix it there, or does it have to come out? If it has to come out, then you're rebuilding it. I mean, you're going through it completely. You're not just going to fix, you know, one little problem. That wouldn't make any sense. Okay. So, your Viton seal. Let me get the contents out here. I'll remove the snap ring, and then we'll finish up with the forward drum. And then that'll more or less be it. Return spring, I mean, unless it's like bent out of shape or something, these are perfectly fine to reuse. All right, bonded pistons, 3/4 return springs. So to my knowledge, there were no high rate return springs installed from the factory in any of these transmissions. The 4L75 Supermatic may have high rate return springs. I don't know. I've never seen one. That's an over-the-counter high performance unit GM sells. It was never installed into any kind of vehicle in a production sense. Forward piston housing, always check for wear in here. This one sounded perfectly fine when we were doing our, you know, pressure testing, but every once in a while you'll hear a hissing sound coming from deep within inside the drum. If so, and that's when you're, you know, putting air into your forward clutch feed. If so, it is likely forward piston housing is worn. Okay, can be the piston. You know, you want to check the lip seal here, sealing surface here, make sure that they're okay. I mean, you're not going to reuse them. You just want to be able to diagnose problems and positively identify or associate, you know, a given you know, failure mode or characteristic with an associated direct cause. So in the case of the pistons, obviously worn pistons will equate to burnt clutch packs. Okay, number 7 apply ring. It is standard for all 4L60Es. Okay, that's this right here. 700 R4s took a number 4 apply ring in the 88 and up years, and then the 82 to 87, the apply ring was unmarked. You know, there was no number. They were the tallest apply rings, so your 3/4 pack would have the least clearance if you used them. All other things equal. The number 4s were in the middle, and then the number 7s had the most room because they're the shortest. Okay, drum itself, just check the area down here. Make sure that there's no micro fractures. Don't forget to replace your O-ring here at the base of the stator. Your bleeder ball, high performance, installed Transgo's high rate return springs with their own bleeder valve. You know, you could just pop this out with a drift and install the Transgo one. All right, in later model units, you want to check here. You'll notice when I was, removing the turbine shaft sealing rings, I was just simply feeling around, making sure that they were all moving, none of them was stuck. Later model units, every once in a while I'll see that, and it'll cut grooves into the stator as well. So if that's the case, you need to replace the input shaft into a drum and stator. And one last thing, and I think I mentioned this before, but I'll show a close-up. So you see the casting number ending in 716. That's all 4L60, 65, and 70Es. The drum itself never changed from 1993. It's just the shafts and the 3/4 pack and pistons. Okay, some evolution in each of those three areas, but the drum never changed. So I have a separate video on 700R4 4L60E, four drums over the years. Check that out if you want a little bit more detail there. So this transmission is okay looking. I mean, obviously I had the band that was broken. Not the end of the world. Again, occasionally I see it. This will get a complete cow kit. We're going to do high energy frictions everywhere. They're like kind of Kevlar impregnated. Alto makes them. I love those frictions. I use them all the time for performance stuff. High rate return springs as mentioned, and the bleeder, little bleeder valve in the forward drum. New sprag, new one-way roller clutch for the low, and new bushings. We're going to use Sonic's performance bushings in the pumps, both the pump body and pump cover, the rear stator bushing there, as well as a Sonic's pump body bushing, not pump cover, pump body. We're going to install a pump body bushing in this location here in place of the factory style bushing. There's actually a technique that I had no clue about until I tore apart that other 4L60E and saw that one was in there. So I was like, yeah, it's a pretty good idea. What else? The bearings look okay. Transgo HD2 kit will be installed into this thing. That's coming out of the other unit. So we're going to take this valve body completely apart, wash it in the jet wash, clean up everything, and then install the kit. I'll have a separate video on that so that you can see what is involved with the HD2. It's a good kit. It's actually a great kit. I hardly ever use it because I will duplicate what it does just, using my own mods. But, if you've never modified a 4L60E or a 65E before, and you're just looking for an out-of-the-box solution that's simple and straightforward, it doesn't get better than the HD2. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, go ahead and leave them below. In summary, the differences between the 4L60 and the 65E are as follows: induction hardened input shaft, 5-pinion front and rear planets. In some models, apparently a Corvette servo. In some models, a different, more aggressive performance calibration for shifts in the separator plate. And as well as the valve body, there may be a different 1-2 accumulator valve in there. The 4L70Es, they took an induction hardened reaction shaft. The 65s did not have that. So, those are going to be your main differences, and then we went over how to identify a 65V. So whenever possible, try to get some background on the transmission you're buying, if it's a 65 or a 70, to see where it came from, what vehicle, because they're not all the same in terms of how they're set up. All right, thanks so much for watching. If there's anything in terms of differences that I missed, I'll annotate, but otherwise this should be a good reference video for you. And when we go to do the HD2 kit install as part of the buildup of this thing, I'll go ahead and film that as well. All right, have a great rest of your day or evening, and we'll see you on the next one.